トビデオ
Historically, fighting games have been divided up into two main subgenres, 2D fighting games and 3D fighting games. These distinctions have nothing to do with the graphics, mind you, but rather the space. 2D fighters are fought squarely on a two-dimensional X and Y axis plane. As a result, the gameplay is a lot faster, the range of attacks can vary wildly, and a lot of focus is put on cancels and special moves. 3D fighters, as the name would imply, take place in 3 dimensions. This results in slower, more methodical gameplay where dodging and sidestepping is just as important as blocking and cancels, and special moves are de-emphasized in favor of gimmicks and knowledge checks, i.e. knowing which combo string can be ducked or broken out of and the like. Currently, these two subgenres live in harmony, but back around the mid-90s it was a much different story. With the advent of 3D fighter pioneers Virtua Fighter and Tekken, along with the breakthrough of 3D polygonal graphics, game companies saw what they assumed to be the path to fighting games' future. Two War Warriors facing off with feats of martial prowess was already pretty hype, but what if you added a Z-axis? The potential for complicated throws and ring-outs became endless. It was an inevitable development that came with the march of graphical progress, but for a while, it seemed like 3D fighters were the only fighters that mattered to a large percentage of gamers. Even the best looking sprites looked old hat compared to the mind-blowing pixel work that was only getting better year after year. Even 2D fighter mainstays eventually had to make the leap to the third dimension. But like with any new technology, the novelty eventually wore off, and a lot of franchises focused around 3D fighting eventually got left in the dust, most of them not even making it to the HD era. Even great franchises like Bloody Roar and Def Jam got hung out to dry. Nowadays, the 3D fighter seems to be reduced to 4 stalwart franchises: Tekken, Virtua Fighter, Soul Calibur, and Dead or Alive. And even then, Virtua Fighter is coming off a 20+ year hiatus, and the futures of the latter two do not look great. What was once the future of fighting games is now reduced to a niche product at best. But let's rewind back to the second golden age, where 3D fighters were getting greenlit like crazy and weren't simply artifacts of a bygone era. We cast our eyes on one of the first titles that followed in the wake of Virtua and Tekken. For one brief moment in the 90s, it burned bright and hot, and by the time the new millennium was being rung in, it was already forgotten. But in the midst of its limited franchise run, it netted itself an anime. Eiji Shinoda, a young wandering swordsman, is currently dealing with the ghost of his past. 1 year ago, he fought in the infamous underground bloodsport tournament known as the Battle Arena Toshinden. He made it all the way to the final block to face off against the tournament's main sponsor, Gaia. But before a victor could be decided, the two duelists are rudely interrupted by a Sri Lankan scythe-wielding wild man named Chaos, and the group he represents known only as the Organization.
Gaia! Eiji, train yourself well. Only then can our true battle begin.
Denied victory, Eiji left the tournament in shame. What's worse is that he has also failed his true goal of joining the tournament in the first place, seeing if he could find any clues pertaining to the whereabouts of his lost older brother, Sho. But now he gets word that a mysterious warrior is hunting down the champions of the previous tournaments and using their own moves against them, and he looks like Sho. Eiji and Kaien, his rival and companion from the last tournament, join forces to uncover this mystery to find the connection between the mysterious warrior, Chaos, and the Organization.
Work hard and improve, Chaos, and you will become my worthy servant. And continue your work as well, Sho.
I bet very few of you have even heard of the Battle Arena Toshinden franchise, unless you were an early adopter of 5th generation consoles or were a fan of certain YouTube channels. And I bet even fewer of you are aware of the fact that the franchise netted itself an anime OVA adaptation in 1996, as was the style at the time. And when I scratch the surface of this one, you may be tempted to call me out for breaking out last year's leftovers. What we've got here is a mid-90s OVA adaptation of an obscure mid-90s fighting game with high-pass special moves and exaggerated loud character designs, all of which is helmed by the one, the only, Masami Obari. But slow your roll there, peons. Battle Arena Toshinden and Voltage Fighter Go Kaiser might appear to be the same at first glance, but in reality, they couldn't be more polar opposites. You see, Voltage Fighter Go Kaiser is the result of a rockstar designer slash animator like Masami Obari being given carte blanche in shepherding the fighting game he spearheaded into the realm of animation. It's pure self-indulgent nonsense, and that's what helps make it a more respectable type of bad anime. But Battle Arena Toshinden? This is domesticated Obari, and Obari clearly in it for the paycheck. And I don't blame him in the slightest because this anime is straight balls. 3D. For the amount of fighting game adaptations we've covered over the years, we do know that a lot of them aren't always the best. Damn it! But boy, I was not expecting how dully terrible this one was. It can almost give both the Samurai Showdown OVA and the Art of Fighting OVA a run for their money. So without further ado, let's enter this arena and do battle with the Toshinden OVA.
There's something very weird about this case.
The Battle Arena Toshinden story begins not with the game's developer, not a game's company, but rather a toy company. Specifically, the toy company Takara. We've talked about them before as the originators of the series of transforming robot toys that would eventually become Transformers. But they are way more than the inventors of a couple of robots in disguise. They were the creators of the Lika-chan dolls, basically Japan's Barbie equivalent. They are the ones helming the popular Beyblade franchise of competitive battle tops and associated anime. And they're the ones localizing a lot of Hasbro's own franchises besides Transformers, from the popular Game of Life board game to Magic the Gathering. In short, they are the toys and games company of Japan. And since video games are also toys, I just made some people really mad with that comment, Takara also rooted around the garden of video games. Their first being, of course, a Transformers game, 1986's Mystery of Convoy. From there, Takara mostly acted as a publisher for video games of other franchises like Tokyo Mew Mew, Duel Masters, and Armor Trooper Votoms? Really? Well, I'll be. They were also responsible for porting SNK's games to lower bit consoles, so they already had some links to fighting games' growing golden age. But at the end of the day, Takara was still a business always looking to grow. With fighting game developers making money hand over fist, they couldn't settle for being the middleman for very long. They needed a fighting game franchise that they themselves owned. So Takara went over to their internal game studio, Tamsoft, and told them to come up with a fighting game. It was late 1993, and Tamsoft's untitled fighting game franchise was still in the conceptual stage. They didn't even know which platform it would be going to. That is, until Sony made the earth-shattering announcement that they were entering the console wars with a new disc-based media focus that emphasized cutting-edge 3D polygonal graphics. Tamsoft now had their target. They were going to develop their fighting game for the PlayStation and the PlayStation alone. According to Takara, the main hook of the series was that it was actually going to be the first 3D fighter to make full use of the 3 dimensions. While Virtua Fighter and Tekken utilized full 3D spaces for their fighting arenas, they still operated on a plane with two fighters facing each other in a line. Toshinden, meanwhile, would have characters circle each other, able to hit each other from the back or side. That's why the crux of the gameplay is built on weapons-based fighting over the pugilism of other fighting games. Takara even boasted that Toshinden was better than Virtua Fighter because their graphics had a lot more realism to them thanks to their innovations in Gorad shading. That might not mean a lot now, but it was an easy sell when compared to the papercraft that was the Virtua Fighter cast. Plus, in Takara's words, each character consisted of a whopping 1,000 polygons, which is super impressive for the time considering that Mario from Super Mario 64 was only a mere 752 polygons. Even with this knowledge, when principal programming began in May of 1994, the game was completed in under 6 months with 25 people working on it by the end of development. No doubt crunch time was a huge factor, but Takara really needed this game to be a title that launched early in the PlayStation's life cycle, which it did, launching on New Year's Day 1995. Less than a month after the PlayStation's Japanese Christmas debut, and at a perfect time when children got their pockets full of New Year's money to spend. Takara's Gambit paid in full. Toshinden's lifetime sales in Japan were 696,851 units. When the game got released in America, it sold out within its first week. It, along with Ridge Racer, were the perfect tech demos to show gaming audiences what the world of video games had in store for them in the world of 3D. Toshinden was so synonymous with the PlayStation brand that one of their fighters, Sophia, kinda became the system's mascot for a hot minute. However, that's just one title. In order to make this series a household name, you have to build on what you created. Make an even better game to show that Toshinden is not a one and done. Tamsoft got to work on a sequel almost immediately. It was going to be bigger, faster, and introduce an overdrive meter. But while Tamsoft did all the work, Takara was busy completely whoring this franchise out for all it's worth. There were drama CDs, there were multiple tie-in manga, and even Takara couldn't let this franchise be a PlayStation exclusive. They ported it everywhere they could, from PC, to Game Boy, to the goddamn Tiger Electronics R-Zone. They even ported the game to their rival Sega Saturn system, despite Takara marketing Toshinden as the Saturn Killer. It is through this marketing blitz that an anime meant to promote the Toshinden sequel game came into being, and I can only assume it was done by Takara flipping through the Rolodex and choosing the most obvious candidates. Who can reliably bankroll an anime project? Victor Entertainment. Who can get this anime done on time and on budget? JC Staff. And who's the one guy who directs almost all the fighting game anime adaptations of this period? Why, it's Masami Obari. No brainer. And how fortuitous they were able to net Obari-sama, because he is the Toshinden OVA's sole saving grace. JC Staff was a truly reliable studio putting out pretty good works around this time period, but a lot of that were only as good as either the budget they were given or their director, and even with the latter, that wasn't always a given. Judging from how this anime looks, Masami Obari was clearly put on a tight budget and an even tighter creative leash. Let's get this confirmation out of the way first. You're not going to see any of Obari's trademark fan service in any way. No boobs boobly boobling in this respectable OVA. He also didn't get to adapt the character designs. That position instead went to Obari-like artist Tsukasa Kotobuki. And even then, his designs feel very clamped down compared to what he usually does. But what we lack in raw boobage, we more than make up for it with Obari's strong eye for character movement and setting up shots. This talent in boarding, combined with some stellar animation work courtesy of people like Kazunori Iwakura and Soichiro Masuda, helped give Toshinden some incredible fight animation. It's flashy without being ostentatious, illustrating that these are true masters of their armaments of choice by how much control they have over them. Probably not easy when you consider that the animators have to animate good fight scenes involving swords, sights, whips, and tonfa sticks all in one anime. Props given where they are deserved. Although, it can only really look so good. You can tell this pales in comparison to Obari's work with Fatal Fury and Voltage Fighter Go Kaiser. Those had budgets that allowed for a far greater depth of color and shading, compared to here where the colors are all washed out in that specific low-tier budget OVA of the 90s way. I also have the inkling that when trying to figure out where to allocate the time and money for production, all the money was wisely chosen to go to the fight scenes and the fight scenes alone. Outside the action, it's a lot of still frames and close-ups to keep the cost cut. And while Obari-sama does try to gussy up some of these scenes with some cinematic boarding, there is a point where you can tell where he and the rest of the team just said, fuck it. The moment when the final confrontation is over, you can tell that they are running on cents instead of dollars, and they just want to wrap it up. The animation gets more rigid, the boarding gets more uninspired, and quality control goes off a cliff. Japanese voice cast did procure some awesome talent, Tomokazu Seiki and Daisuke Gori as Eiji and Gaio respectively, putting in good performances if only because you've probably heard them elsewhere.
お前のような男を待っていた。私の仲間となり、共に戦おうではないか。
As for the dub, it's a late 90s Central Park Media production, so there's a clear ceiling for how good it can be.
One of the things I take pleasure in is seeing little children smile. Another thing I take pleasure in is seeing these covered with blood.
Though I will comment that they did spring for their A-list with a lot of future 4Kids regulars like Ted Lewis, the late Jimmy Zoppi, Deborah Rabbi, and a young Lisa Ortiz.
Ooh, those two! I wanna fight!
Also, hi Apollo, smile.
And even if I believe that bit about fighting a stray dog off, I'm betting it wasn't your run-of-the-mill street fight.
So what about the story of Battle Arena Toshinden? How was that handled? Poorly. A fighting game anime adaptation not telling a good story? Alert the media. But even with some of the worst titles I've done videos on so far, they've given me far more stuff to work with than Toshinden.
I'll never give it up! Not to anyone!
So we start off with a hard-won peace treaty being signed between two nations on a battleship. But the ceremony is interrupted by a powerful swordsman who is tearing through all this military hardware like wet bread, and none of the weapons have any effect on him. We then cut to the same swordsman getting into a fight with an old magician with Wolverine claws before quickly cutting to our hero Eiji musing on the previous tournament before flashing back to his final fight with Gaia that was interrupted by chaos. If this all sounds confusing and coming at you way too fast, don't worry, you're in good company. I did not play any of the Toshinden games. I may have briefly watched a friend play it on their PlayStation briefly as a kid, but that's about it. And as someone of that ever-growing demographic, I was completely lost not even 5 minutes into the anime, because this is an anime that hinges on you knowing the first Toshinden game inside and out. If you were a Toshinden fan, you would know that the swordsman is Eiji's long-lost brother Sho, or a clone of him as we'll later learn. The claw magician is the character Fo-Fi, and our hero Eiji was the winner of the tournament since we see him fight the final boss, Gaia. Most fighting game adaptations also throw a ton of characters at you in a way that could be overwhelming to newcomers, but they sometimes do want to ease you in by giving the characters at least some introduction. Here, they are throwing you in the deep end of the pool and expecting you to learn the butterfly stroke. But let's back that ass up a little. How exactly does the first Toshinden game tell us its story? Well, like most games of that era, the lion's share of the narrative is within the instruction manual that came with the game. It's where we learn about what the Toshinden tournament is about, who's funding it, and why our cast of characters have entered it in the first place. Not glamorous, but that's how things were back then. But then, as the anime goes on, we get plot beats that are dropped in our laps, and we're supposed to pick them up and act like we've known about them all along. A huge plot point that's acted on like we already knew it is the character Ellis, knife thrower and resident cutie of the cast, is the long-lost daughter of Gaia.
You are the bait to lure Gaia right into my trap.
My father?
The story beat was not in the original game, and the anime pulls it out as if it were an as you know. Even after doing the necessary research, it still feels like me and the game are on two different planets. And I'm coming at this as someone who is barely passingly familiar with the Toshinden franchise. Imagine being a fan of the original game. The chorus of "wait, what?" would be endless. And for reference, here's what the end cutscene to Ellis campaign looks like in case you think I'm skipping over some details.
I never give up.
And for a fighting game showcase, only Eiji, Gaia, and maybe Cayenne come out looking good. While other fighting game anime can reduce people's faves to jobbers, Toshinden takes the cake by making most of the principal cast look weak as paper straws. The characters of Fo-Fi, Mondo, and Rongo Iron's only real screen time is to be introduced and get stomped by the organization's heavy hitters 30 seconds later. And even then, they all still have a better showing than Ellis, who is in full coughing baby mode. So much so that she's benched for the remainder of the runtime as a means to both artificially raise the stakes and to get Gaia on Eiji's side. The Toshinden anime's pacing really does feel like it's running a sprint instead of a marathon. It's the only way it can be explained why so many plot turns feel so slapdash. Hey, Sophia needs a fight scene, so we'll just have the organization Big Bad Uranus hypnotize her wirelessly with an ability she'll never use again so she can fight Eiji. It surely will result in a pointless one-sided fight because Eiji refuses to hit her back.
Sophia, it's all right now. It's all right.
Oh no.
Hey, we need to get our policewoman character Tracy in on this action since she's one of the fighters we're introducing in the new game. Let's have her join Eiji and his crew by having her be shown a news report of a terrorist attack and taking Eiji's word that it was the organization's doing, whose base of operations is coincidentally within driving distance of Tracy's jurisdiction. hey, we need a big climax where AG and company team up with Gaia to fight Chaos and the organization's army of show clones. Why not bring everyone back for that, including Rungo, who clearly was supposed to look like he got killed off. They do show he was only injured after that fight, which raises further questions. And Rambert, who didn't even get a proper introduction scene.
We can handle these guys. The two of you get going.
Okay, who are you?
Story beats like this only make sense if you're writing from the end goal backwards. The finish line is in sight, so who cares how they get there? And really, the ending is only just setting up the hooks for the sequel. Even though Chaos is defeated, Uranus gets away, and AG and team only get to escape thanks to some timely intervention from Sho, the real Sho this time. And we end with AG facing a mysterious combatant with Vashta Stampede glasses and the most powerful weapon of all, a gun. Spoiler, he's Vermilion, the secret boss of the Toshinden sequel. The Battle Arena Toshinden anime is not meant to tell a story. It's meant to promote a game under the guise of telling a story. Okay, that's the mission statement for most of these types of anime, but I've never seen the stated goal of the anime being nothing but shallow marketing material hung out there so plainly. For this reason, this OVA was never going to stand the test of time. After Battle Arena Toshinden 2 came out to good reception, Takara bled that puppy dry, dropping money on so many weird spin-offs and ports that the mainline title seemed to get the shaft. After the disappointments of Toshinden 3 and 4, Takara knew the keg was tapped and tossed it in the dumpster. Today, Tampsoft is less known as the Toshinden developers and more known as the minds behind esteemed prestige titles like Oni-chan-bara Bikini Samurai Squad and Senran Kagura Peach Beach Splash. The Battle Arena Toshinden OVA's place in history is being merely a dusty relic. While Masami Obari can work some of his magic, he's still hampered by both the budget and the material he was given to work with. He can be a lot of things, but a miracle worker he is not. In the end, Battle Arena Toshinden is only worth looking at as a piece of video game history and not a particularly memorable one. For the rest of us, we can give this anime the ring out it deserves. Thank you all for watching. If you like this video or want to support this channel, please donate to my Patreon. Each dollar can give you early access to my videos as they come out, as well as keep the channel running a bit more smoothly. You can also subscribe to the channel, ring that bell for notifications, or just like this video. Either way, you'll be helping me out. That's all for now. See you for the next round of tapes.